I used to love Valentine's Day, not for the romance, not for the cheesy heart-shaped chocolates, but because for the last 5 years, it's been the only time I feel close to her. Megan, the girl I was supposed to spend my life with. The girl who disappeared on Valentine's Day 5 years ago. I still remember the last time I saw her. She was standing by the door of our tiny apartment, putting on her coat, smiling at me as she wrapped her scarf around her neck. "I'll be right back," she had said. "Don't go anywhere." She never came home. At first, I wasn't worried. She had probably just gotten caught up somewhere, running an errand, picking up a last-minute gift. Then an hour passed. Then 2. Her phone went straight to voicemail. By midnight, my hands were shaking as I dialed her number again and again. By morning, I was calling hospitals, then police stations. By that evening, I was filing a missing persons report. And then, nothing. No witnesses. No CCTV footage. No calls. No texts. No body. Just gone. People told me to move on. That maybe she had left on her own. But I knew Megan. She wouldn't do that. She loved me. We had plans. For the first year, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I searched, I questioned. I drove down every street she had ever walked, hoping I'd find something, anything. But all I found was silence. And then, a year later, on February 14th, the first envelope arrived. A red envelope slipped into my mailbox. No return address. No stamp. Inside, a small note. "Miss me?" No explanation. No clues. Just those 2 words. The police told me it was a prank. Someone messing with me. I tried to believe them. But the next year, it happened again. And the year after that. And the next. Always the same message. Always on Valentine's Day. No fingerprints. No evidence. Just her handwriting. I never told anyone. What was I supposed to say? That my missing girlfriend was sending me love notes from the void? But this year is different. Because last night, for the first time in 5 years, I saw her. And I think she wants me to follow. It started at 11:45 p.m., the night before Valentine's Day. I was in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it. The envelope. It always arrived exactly at midnight. I had been tempted to stay by the mailbox, to see who was leaving it. But some part of me was afraid. Afraid that if I saw the person responsible, if I caught them in the act, it would all become too real. So instead, I waited. But then, at 11:47 p.m., something changed. My phone buzzed. I frowned. No one ever called me this late. Then I saw the screen. No caller ID. My stomach twisted. I let it ring. It stopped. Then buzzed again. And again. 3 calls. Then a text. "Come outside." I sat up, my throat suddenly dry. My apartment was silent. The only sound the faint hum of the streetlights outside. I hesitated. Then, heart hammering, I got up and pulled back the curtain. At first, I saw nothing. Just the empty sidewalk, the dim glow of the street lamp flickering against the pavement. Then, movement. A figure stood at the edge of the street, just outside the pool of light. My breath caught. A woman. She was wearing a coat, a scarf wrapped around her neck. My stomach dropped. She was standing exactly where Megan had parked her car 5 years ago. I couldn't see her face. The shadows swallowed her features, but I knew. I stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my ribs. I blinked. She was closer. I hadn't seen her move. I stepped toward the window again, pulse roaring in my ears. The light flickered, casting a dull glow over the sidewalk. And for the first time, I saw her face. Megan. I almost collapsed. It was her. It was really her. But something was wrong. Her skin was too pale. Her lips, slightly parted. Her eyes, they weren't blinking. She was just staring. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Then my phone buzzed again. I forced my shaking hands to check the message. "Come outside." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I wanted to run out, hold her, tell her I never stopped looking, tell her I never stopped loving her. But every instinct in my body told me not to. She was waiting for me. And then, she tilted her head. Not slowly, not normally, but fast. A sharp, unnatural movement that made my stomach churn. And then, with that same stiff, frozen stare. She started walking toward my door. I staggered back, panic rising in my throat. I checked the door, locked. I stepped further away, my mind screaming at me to move, to hide, to do something. The knock came at exactly midnight. Soft, rhythmic, 3 slow knocks, then silence. I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall, my vision swimming. Then, the sound of paper sliding under the door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving away. I counted to 10, then 20, then 50. Then, finally, I forced myself to move. I crept toward the door, my legs shaking. My hand trembled as I reached down, picking up the red envelope from the floor. I already knew what it would say, but I turned it over anyway. Same handwriting, same 2 words. Miss me? Except, there was something else this time. A smudged fingerprint in the corner. A dark, wet stain. And underneath the words, something scribbled in frantic, uneven letters. Don't follow. Not the usual 2-word message. This one was different. Urgent. Like someone had scrawled it in a rush. My breath hitched. The ink was smudged, and in the corner, a dark stain. Not ink. Something else. Something that made my stomach churn. Blood. I ran to the window, scanning the empty sidewalk, my chest heaving. Megan was gone. The street lamp flickered weakly, the world beyond my apartment silent, like she had never been there at all. I wanted to believe I was hallucinating, that grief had finally broken me. But the note was still in my hands. Real, cold, stained. I should have listened. I should have locked my door, thrown the letter away, and never looked back. But I couldn't, because for the first time in 5 years, I had proof. Megan was out there, somewhere. And no matter what that note said, I was going to find her. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing beneath the streetlight, her unblinking stare, her tilted head. The way she moved, too sudden, too unnatural. By morning, I was already making a plan. I needed to go back to where it happened, the place she had disappeared, her last known location, the parking lot behind the flower shop. It was the last place her phone had pinged before she went missing. The police had checked it back then. I had checked it 100 times. There was nothing. But now? Now, I had to check again. By the time I got there, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gray. The flower shop was still open, its display window filled with pink bouquets and heart-shaped balloons for Valentine's Day. I barely glanced at it. My focus was on the lot behind the building. It was mostly empty, except for a few scattered cars and a dumpster in the corner. A chill ran through me. Nothing had changed. It was exactly the way it had been 5 years ago. I walked slowly, my shoes crunching against the asphalt. And then I saw it. A single red envelope, sitting in the middle of the lot, waiting for me. My pulse pounded in my ears. I hesitated, my instinct screaming at me to turn around, to leave. But I couldn't. I stepped forward, my hands shaking as I bent down and picked it up. The handwriting was the same. Miss me? But this time, beneath those 2 words, there was something new. An address, scrawled in hurried, uneven letters. An address I didn't recognize. I swallowed hard. Every rational part of my brain told me this was a trap, but it didn't matter. I was already getting into my car. I was already following. The address led me to the outskirts of town, past winding back roads and miles of empty woods. The deeper I drove, the darker it got. The streetlights became less frequent, until there were none at all. Just the endless road, swallowed by the trees. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. The turnoff was barely visible, a narrow dirt path leading into the forest. My headlights flickered as I slowed down, my tires crunching over gravel. A house sat at the end of the road. Small, run down, completely dark. There were no cars, no lights, just the wind howling through the trees, rattling the bare branches. I gripped the steering wheel, my breath shallow. Something about this place felt wrong, like it had been waiting for me. I sat there for a long moment, debating whether I should turn around. Then, my headlights flickered, the dashboard lights dimmed, and my engine cut off. The car died. I twisted the key. Nothing. The air around me felt different now. Heavy, charged, like something was watching. Then, from the trees, a whisper, faint, distant, a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. "Come inside." My stomach turned to ice. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to see. But my body was already betraying me. My legs stepping out of the car, my feet crunching against the frozen dirt. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. I pushed it open, the hinges creaking. The air inside was stale, cold. The living room was empty. No furniture, no dust, like no one had ever lived here. Just one thing. At the center of the room, a mirror, tall, old, the kind with an ornate gold frame, the glass warped with age. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. Because in the reflection, I didn't see the room. I saw the parking lot behind the flower shop, and Megan, standing there, waiting. My mouth went dry. I stepped closer, my fingers twitching at my sides. Megan lifted her head. Our eyes met through the glass. She was crying. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked terrified, like she was trying to tell me something. Then, her face changed. Her eyes widened in horror. She started shaking her head. And behind me, a breath, cold, slow, right against my neck. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch as Megan's hands slammed against the glass, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Then, just behind her in the reflection, something moved. Not a person, not in it. A shadow, tall, unnatural, with too many arms. I felt something crawl up my spine. Then, before I could react, the mirror shattered. I woke up in my car. The sun was rising. The house was gone. No dirt path, no clearing, just an endless stretch of trees, like it had never been there at all. I checked my hands. They were bleeding, tiny cuts, like I had been gripping shards of glass. I turned on my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Then, as I sat there, trying to breathe, trying to understand, I heard it, a soft fluttering sound. I turned slowly. On my passenger seat, a single red envelope. I picked it up with trembling hands. Same handwriting, same 2 words. Miss me? I don't know what happened that night. I don't know where Megan is. But I know one thing. That wasn't the last letter. And next Valentine's Day, I don't think I'll have a choice. I think I have to follow. I never should have gone on that date. I wasn't even planning to. I had never been big on Valentine's Day, and after my last breakup, I wasn't in the mood to pretend I was fine sitting across from a stranger, making small talk over overpriced food. But my friends wouldn't let it go. Dude, it's been a year. You need to get out there again. She seems perfect for you. Just one date. Worst case, you get a free dinner and never talk to her again. I should have said no, but I didn't. Her name was Isabel. She was pretty, in that effortless kind of way. Long brown hair, sharp blue eyes, a small beauty mark near the corner of her mouth. She had a quiet confidence to her, the kind that made it feel like she already knew me. Our mutual friend, Amber, had set us up. She swore up and down that Isabel was amazing, that we'd hit it off instantly. She wasn't wrong. The conversation flowed easily, like we had known each other for years. Isabel asked all the right questions, laughed at all the right moments. She was charming without trying too hard, flirty without being obvious. Still, something about her felt off. Not in a bad way, just unsettling, like she knew too much about me. Not just basic things, hobbies, favorite movies, but things I hadn't told her. Halfway through dinner, she leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. "So, why'd your last relationship end?" I hesitated. "Amber tell you about that?" Her lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "No, I just figured someone like you wouldn't be single unless something happened." I shifted in my seat. It just didn't work out. Isabel tilted her head, her blue eyes glinting in the candlelight. "She didn't just leave, though, did she?" I froze. Something about the way she said it, too certain. Like she wasn't asking. Like she already knew. The air around us felt heavier. The soft hum of the restaurant blurred into the background. I forced a laugh, picking up my drink. That's a weird thing to say. She didn't blink, didn't look away, just smiled. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "She still loves you, you know?" My stomach turned to ice. The words hit me like a punch to the chest, because she had said them exactly the way my ex had. The last words she had spoken to me before she died. I put my glass down, my hand visibly shaking. I wanted to ask Isabel what she meant. I wanted to demand how she knew those words. But she was already reaching for her purse. She placed something on the table, a folded piece of paper. Then she stood, grabbing her coat. "See you soon," she murmured. She left without another word. The second she was gone, I grabbed the note. My pulse roared in my ears as I unfolded it. And when I saw what was inside, I felt the air leave my lungs. Because it wasn't a message. It was a photo of me, taken from inside my bedroom. I sat frozen in that restaurant booth, my fingers clenched around the photograph, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. It was my bedroom. The angle of the shot was low, taken from the corner of the room, just beside my dresser. And there I was, lying in bed, asleep. The blankets were tangled around me, my arms stretched out toward the empty half of the bed where she used to sleep. It wasn't an old picture. It wasn't something my ex had taken, because on my nightstand, I could see the book I had started reading last week. My pulse pounded in my ears. My mind refused to make sense of it. Someone had been in my apartment, had stood in my room, had watched me sleep, and the only person who could have left this for me, the only person who knew exactly what happened to my ex, was Isabel. I barely remembered driving home. The streets were empty, washed in the glow of neon signs and flickering streetlights. The cold air bit at my skin, but I could barely feel it. My hands were shaking against the steering wheel, my head spinning. The moment I pulled into my parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text. No caller ID. I hesitated before opening it. One sentence. "Don't check the closet." My stomach dropped. I turned toward my apartment window. From outside, I could see my bedroom light was on. I hadn't left it on. Every inch of my body screamed at me to leave, to call someone, to do anything but walk inside that apartment. But I already knew I was going to. I had to. The air inside felt wrong, heavy, like something had settled over the walls, pressing down on the space. I locked the door behind me and stepped forward, my breath shallow. The apartment was exactly how I left it, except for the light in my room, and the closet door, slightly open. My entire body locked up. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even used that closet in months. I forced my feet forward, stepping into the bedroom. The door creaked as I pushed it open further. The space inside was dark, the hanging coats and jackets swaying slightly, like something had just been standing there. For a long, horrible moment, I just stood there, waiting. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Then, slowly, I lowered myself to the floor and looked underneath. My breath caught in my throat, because there, in the dust beneath the hanging coats, were footprints. Small, barefoot, like someone had been standing in there for hours, watching, waiting. I staggered backward, my pulse hammering. I reached for my phone, my hands slick with sweat as I opened the camera. I turned on the flash, snapping a picture. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof. Maybe I needed something to remind me that I wasn't losing my mind. But when I looked at the photo, I saw something else. Something standing behind me. The reflection in my bedroom window. A woman. Not Isabel. Her. My ex. Emily. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale and lifeless. Her lips moved soundlessly in the reflection, like she was trying to say something. Then, a whisper, but not from the reflection. From behind me. I turned. The closet door slammed shut on its own. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, every light in the apartment on, my back pressed against the couch. My hands were still trembling. My phone buzzed. Another message. No caller ID. I forced myself to look. You shouldn't have looked. I squeezed my eyes shut. My body was shaking so hard it felt like my bones would snap. Then, the closet door creaked. Not opening. Not closing. Just shifting. Like something was moving inside. I stayed there, paralyzed, until morning. When the sun rose, I grabbed my keys and left. I haven't gone back. I had my landlord clear the place out, send my things to a storage unit. I moved across the city. I changed my number. But no matter where I go, the messages keep coming. Every Valentine's Day, every year. And now, I don't check my closet anymore. Because I already know. She's still inside, waiting. I met Vanessa at the worst possible time. Valentine's Day had always been a reminder of what I didn't have. I wasn't the kind of guy who got lucky in love. I had been single for 2 years, and after another failed talking stage, I was done hoping for something real. But a week before Valentine's, I matched with her on a dating app. Vanessa was beautiful in a way that didn't seem real. Dark wavy hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that made my stomach twist. But there was something about her profile that struck me as odd. She only had one photo. No bio. No social media links. Just her name. Normally, I wouldn't have swiped right, but I did. And she matched instantly. I messaged her first. She responded almost immediately, and just like that, we were talking for hours. She was funny, engaging, almost too perfect. By the second night, I had her number, and by the third, she had already suggested we meet in person. I won't lie, I was excited, but something about it nagged at me. Most women I talked to on dating apps were hesitant to meet up so fast. Vanessa wasn't. I ignored the feeling. I was just overthinking it. We agreed to meet the night before Valentine's Day. She picked the place, a small, dimly lit restaurant on the edge of town, somewhere I had never heard of. When I got there, she was already waiting at a candlelit booth, dressed in a black coat, her hair cascading over her shoulders. She smiled as I approached, but there was something about her expression that made my stomach turn. It wasn't excitement. It was like she had been waiting for me. The conversation was perfect. Too perfect. She seemed interested in every little thing I said, tilting her head slightly, her eyes locked onto mine, like she was memorizing every word. And then she asked me something strange. "Do you believe in fate?" I laughed, brushing it off, but she didn't laugh with me. She just stared, waiting. I shrugged. "I don't know. I guess so." Her lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "I knew you'd say that." The rest of the night blurred together. At some point, she insisted we go back to my place. I hesitated, but her eyes, they had this intensity that made it impossible to say no. I drove us back, my stomach twisting with unease the entire way. I should have listened to my gut. I should have never let her inside. I unlocked my apartment door, letting Vanessa step inside first. As soon as she crossed the threshold, I felt it. Something was wrong. She moved too smoothly, like she had been here before, like she already knew the space. She turned to me with that same calm smile and unbuttoned her coat. The moment she let it slide off her shoulders, my breath caught in my throat. She was wearing a dress I had seen before. A red dress, the exact same one my ex, Melanie, had worn the night we broke up. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "How did you?" I trailed off, my voice barely a whisper. Vanessa stepped closer. "Something wrong?" I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe. "That dress, it looks just like Melanie's," she finished for me. The room tilted. I took a step back, nearly stumbling into the coffee table. "How do you know her name?" Vanessa tilted her head, her green eyes glinting in the dim light. "You told me." "I didn't. I knew I hadn't." Something cold curled in my gut. Vanessa took another step forward, closing the distance between us. "Relax," she murmured. "I just want to get to know you better." I wanted to tell her to leave. I wanted to grab my keys and bolt out the door, but I couldn't move. She raised a hand and lightly brushed her fingers along my jaw, her nails too sharp, too cold. And then she whispered something in my ear that made my blood freeze. "Do you believe in fate?" It was the exact same way Melanie had said it. The same tone, the same intonation. My body locked up. I felt a sharp, electric jolt of pure wrongness. And then, Vanessa laughed. A slow, eerie chuckle that sent every nerve in my body into panic mode. I finally forced my legs to move. I stepped back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "Who the hell are you?" My voice was shaking now. How do you know about Melanie? She smiled, but this time, it wasn't human. It stretched too wide, like her face was pulling apart, like her skin was struggling to hold something else underneath. You let me in, she whispered, and then the lights flickered. Not once, not twice, but in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat, or like something was trying to push through. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, my fingers shaking as I tried to dial 911. No signal. The screen flickered, then died. I looked up, and Vanessa was still there, still smiling, her green eyes now darker, almost black. This isn't real, I muttered. This isn't real. Oh, she whispered, taking a step closer. It's real. More real than anything you've ever known. The room tilted again. My vision blurred, like the walls were breathing, stretching in and out. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if something unseen had filled the space. Vanessa's voice was soft, almost loving. You should have left that restaurant when you had the chance. I stumbled backward toward the door, gripping the handle, twisting it hard. Locked. I never locked it. My pulse roared in my ears. I twisted the knob again, yanking as hard as I could. Nothing. I turned back. Vanessa was gone. The apartment was silent. The air felt lighter, like whatever had been in the room was suddenly absent. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, behind me, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, I saw her, standing right behind me, smiling, her eyes completely black, her mouth still too wide. And then, without moving her lips, I heard her voice inside my head. You let me in. The mirror shattered. I woke up the next morning in my bed. The room was quiet, normal. The sun streamed in through the blinds, warm and golden. For a brief, blissful moment, I thought it had been a dream. Then I sat up. On my nightstand was a single red dress, folded neatly, waiting for me, and beside it, a note, scrawled in my own handwriting. See you next Valentine's.